Welcome to this week's episode of the Sports Curious podcast. I am your host, Amy Butchon-Siegfried, and I am joined by my co-host, the football coach extraordinaire, youth football coach extraordinaire at that, creator of Giants, sports guru extraordinaire, Scott. Hey, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Once again, it's an honor to join you this week, talking about a fun subject that we've been looking forward to for quite a while. And how are you? How are you holding up?
I'm tired. If you can't tell to my voice, I'm pretty worn out. Today was a birthday for the tiny human, so it was a long day. But we're here.
A lot of setup and takedown.
Well, for one, I'm solo parenting, so that's for an extended period of time. So that gets to be a little exhausting as it is. But yes, we had the news this morning, a lot of other things. So when you got to get up and out the door, full makeup, full hair, I know you know a lot about that. It makes for an extra. I'm not used to like having to do all the layers of face and things. So it was a sporty morning, an early morning, and I still have to go vacuum cake up off the carpet from our little pizza party this evening. So, and then roll up a bouncy house that is in my garage. So that's where we're at. So we're gonna do the podcast, and then I'm gonna go attempt to like Girl Scout sleeping bag my the bouncy house. So there you have it.
So the after party is much different for a young child than an adult.
Yes. The after party, like when you have a party as an adult, you're like, this is where I eat more cake and eat some of the pizza that I had. Pour a nice glass of wine. Yeah, no, but you know, the nice part is when you have a party with small children and you invite your friends who are also parents of small children, everybody helps clean up. Like all the things, like the house is cleaner probably than the one they got here, minus the cake on the carpet. But so that's a win. So, but enough about children because people without children don't really care. And I totally respect that because it is what it is,
Yeah.
But if I can shed some realistic light on it for anyone, there you go.
That's fun.
It's not all babies and puppies.
Some great insight.
It is cake in the carpet. So with that, how are you?
I'm good. We survived no football off season. It's time.
Yeah, it's time. We did fail to mention that our mascot, our favorite dog, your favorite child, turned 15. So we now have 105-year-old,
105-year-old.
105-year-old. So we've got a 5-year-old and a 105-year-old. Our hands are full here. Okay.
100-year difference. Born one day apart.
And just the loves of our lives. There you go.
Two angels.
Well, on that note, there's no angels. I can't even reference that in football. There's no angels team. So no, I can't do that. Can't even spin it that way. So the favorite sport of the country of the United States, football. We are diving into the NFL season. It's fun, really interesting. So I've talked to a lot of people who are more excited about the NFL season than they are the college football season, which normally that's flip-flopped because people love college sports because they're kind of pure. And now with the conference changes and name, image, likeness and transfer portals, people are kind of burned out on college football. So I have to say I'm excited about the NFL season. It's the first season without Tom Brady. So that'll be interesting. But I know that you're going to give us a lot of great people to keep an eye on to get us excited about the season. So let's kind of start off, if you can, with maybe just a little bit about like a brief overview of when does the season start? Kind of what are some of the things that we might look at?
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Like you said, no Tom Brady for the first time in a very long time. He retired and stayed retired. So we don't have his model looks on the sidelines and a helmet anymore. So we've got to try to figure out a way to move on post Tom.
Now, if I remember correctly, I saw Tom at a Raiders in the locker room for the Raiders during a preseason game because he's now a minority owner of the Raiders.
He is, or they're voting on it sometime soon.
Okay.
So he's in the process, yes.
So okay, but he was in there giving pep talks.
Yes, he was. So he's not completely removed from the game. So I can stand corrected a little bit. We'll probably see him in Las Vegas.
You can hang out with his boyish good looks on the sidelines.
Hanging out with his BFF Mark Davis.
There you go. Similar haircuts.
It's very similar haircuts and bone structure. Yeah, now that there's no Tom, somebody's got to kind of step up and take those reins as the superstar in the league. And I think that's what we've seen is Patrick Mahomes is setting himself up to be that, even though he's much younger than Tom. He's on the Netflix series that, most people have watched, gotten an insight into his life, how he just loves to win. And that's all that really matters to him. Maybe
and he works hard.
Maybe drink Coors Lights and win. I think that's probably other than his family, of course.
I wish I could drink Coors Lights and win.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
well, that's the one thing that Patrick has on us. Just that, I assume.
I assume that and the really nice curly hair.
Yeah.
But besides that, I did hear him say in the show that he's going to cut it when he hits 30.
He did not cut it.
He said he was going to. Okay, well, he lied.
Well, maybe someday.
Okay.
I don't think he gave a distinct date. Yeah, they're kind of setting him up to be the face of the league, coming off that Super Bowl championship, an MVP. Chiefs opened up the season on a Thursday. Primetime TV for everyone, so this is Patrick's league now.
So Thursday, September 7th, the defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, will host the Detroit Lions in Kansas City. I guess we can dive into the Lions now. Like all of a sudden, the Lions are selling out their season tickets. We're talking about Dan Campbell, their head coach. So the NFL turned him down for having a live lion mascot on the field. You're seeing we're seeing the momentum behind the Lions. And this isn't my lack of historic knowledge of the NFL, but has there ever been a big momentum behind the Lions? And is this something we should be tuned in for?
This is kind of a huge momentum shift for the city of Detroit. I mean, not since Barry Sanders, I would say, have they really had this kind of momentum. So a casual fan seeing them open up against the defending Super Bowl champs might be a little shocked. But I think they were on Hard Knocks last season, and everyone kind of fell in love with Dan Campbell, who's just this, the best way to describe him is just a football guy. He's jacked, he's loud, he's intense, and you can just tell that his team respects him a lot, the way he operates. He demands a lot, but he's also a player's coach, having previously played in the league for a long time.
Oh, I don't think I knew that he previously played. That's interesting.
Yeah, so he was a tight end, I believe, for Dallas for quite a while.
Okay.
He's got this, player's mentality, but he's the coach. And what do you say? His Starbucks order was like 20 shots of espresso. Like the guy's just an animal, to be honest. And I think everyone
he's intense.
And he's built his team. He's bringing in players that match his intensity, which, everyone's kind of fallen in love with. So who
are some of those players to look for?
Well, I think his quarterback's Jared Goff, who was with the LA Rams. You'll obviously probably remember him. He and Patrick had a pretty epic matchup. I think it was 2018, where the Rams beat the Chiefs like 54-51. And it was this crazy point-scoring shootout. So I think everyone's kind of hoping that he can replicate that.
That'll be interesting. So the Lions are obviously not a favorite to win the Super Bowl. Looks like the favorites are and this is not probably in the right order, but the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills, and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, one of my favorite stories
that's a solid top four.
That's a solid top four. Yes. So, but one of my favorite stories about the 49ers, and Jimmy Garoppolo's later in our notes, but Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Irrelevant is the last pick in the NFL draft. They're Mr. Irrelevant because they are very unlikely to even make a roster, let alone play, let alone start. And here comes Brock Purdy. And I just remember the videos of his dad in the stands during his start. And he was just overwhelmed. And so obviously Brock Purdy set all these records for Mr. Irrelevance because really they've never, as a whole, have not really done anything. And so, are there any notes you want to share with us on any of those 4 teams besides, obviously, my excitement about Brock Purdy being the starting quarterback, just for that story?
Yeah, just for the storyline alone.
Mhm.
I mean, Mr. Relevant, he was the first Mr. Relevant to ever throw a touchdown pass,
Mhm.
to give you some
I think it was
perspective
to
on.
score a touchdown, wasn't it?
I don't know exactly the wording, but I know he was the first one to throw one.
Okay.
So, I mean, that kind of gives credence to how bizarre and just that it even happened. And then they went on I think he went on a 7-game winning streak. They made it to NFC Championship game, and he tore his UCL, which is what pitchers do. And then that led to the team's demise in the NFC Championship. But he's back. He's starting. He beat out Trey Lance, who 2-3 years previously they traded 3 first-round picks for. He
Wow.
came in, took the job, and they've traded Trey Lance since. So
That's
it's
incredible.
it's one of the least likely stories that ever happened.
It's awesome. Let's really quickly, I wanna roll through a couple of these notable changes, additions to rosters, because I don't
Yes.
wanna go too deep into these players because players are players,
Yes.
and we wanna talk a little bit more about the stories around them. So maybe you can quickly roll through, the notable quarterbacks. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is obviously going to the Jets, and that's a really interesting concept, and we talk a lot about Aaron Rodgers in our podcast that, will come out next week around play calling for quarterbacks. Really interesting podcast. Scott talks a lot about Aaron Rodgers, so we'll kind of Aaron Rodgers on the Jets, we're not expecting him to, like, become the Statue of Liberty and, like, turn everything around.
Jets fans are. The
Jets
media
fans are.
the media hopes he is. I think they've really kind of burnt everyone out on the story already, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Especially with them
Oh,
on Hard Knocks.
yep. We have Baker Mayfield.
He is Tom Brady's successor down in Tampa Bay. We'll see. I'm not sure that they necessarily have the talented roster that he needs to really succeed, but I wouldn't count out Baker. He's
Former
pretty
Heisman Trophy winner.
former Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, may have not gotten the best exit route in Cleveland. They got rid of him. So if he needed more of a chip on his shoulder, he's got it. That's for sure.
Got it. And then we're talking, Jimmy Garoppolo filling in the models looks on the sidelines for Tom Brady.
Yeah, so
He
maybe
went from the 49ers to the Raiders,
49ers. Yep.
which, they're both on the sideline. Are the ladies of Vegas gonna be able to take it?
I honestly don't think that they will. I mean, they were on the sidelines together in New England, which isn't necessarily the most flashy team. So when he was he was Brady's backup in New England. So now he's kind of come full circle. And also another guy that Brock Purdy beat out, Jimmy G. So
Mhm.
he's in Las Vegas now, and if he can stay healthy, I think the Raiders have a pretty good chance to succeed.
And Vegas hosting the Super Bowl this year for the first time.
They are. So if we could have, the hometown team with the beautiful looks of Jimmy Garoppolo on the sidelines, I think that would be a storyline the NFL would write.
I mean, if they could. Just noted that, if you see any tickets, we wouldn't have to worry about a hotel. So if you see any tickets for the Vegas Super Bowl, just, holler.
I've heard pricing. I think it's better off to just watch at home
Well, you never
so
know.
far.
It's gonna be cheaper than the F1 race in Vegas, that's for sure.
Potentially.
Potentially. Depends on
Yeah.
who's in it, right? That
Yeah.
always. So let's talk about, there are 3 rookie quarterbacks that are named as starters, which is a really unique situation. You talk to us real quickly about those 3.
Yeah. Typically, when you draft a quarterback high, in the past, you would like him to sit behind a veteran for a few games, maybe a few years, just to learn the ropes. But this year, we've got 3 guys coming in. It's just going to be full force. They're getting thrown right into the fire. May not have the best rosters. The Colts named Anthony Richardson. They're starting QB out of Florida. He had limited experience in college, so it's really going to be quite the experiment. Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers, Heisman Trophy winner, national championship winner with Alabama. He's going in, got a pretty good squad around him, good head coach, so we'll see. He's probably got the most chance to succeed. And then the Texans have CJ Stroud coming out of Ohio State. They're going to throw him in there with a new roster, new coaching staff. So that'll be pretty interesting. The gap between college and NFL it's
Significant.
massive. Yes.
Yeah.
So usually they don't succeed very well, but who knows?
They don't have a choice right now. Baptism
Yeah.
by fire.
Throw them out there and just who knows? We'll see what happens.
So there's a new rule. We're talking quarterbacks. There's a new rule
Yes.
this year about having a third quarterback on the roster on a game day. Is that like having an emergency goalie in hockey? And why would they do that?
That's exactly like having the emergency goalie in hockey. They are doing that because, like we mentioned, Brock Purdy got hurt in the NFC Championship against the Eagles. His backup got a concussion, and then that left them with no quarterback. So pretty much, I don't know, I'm sure you remember the game. That left like the entire second half of them not even be able to pass the ball, and there was no competition. So in the offseason, the owners voted to allow teams to carry a third quarterback on their roster just for emergency situations where the first two get hurt. As before, they wouldn't carry a third because it would take up an active roster spot, and they'd rather have somebody who could, play special teams and defense or a different position.
Sure, that makes sense. As we transition from that to I'm going to use I don't know where else to drop this, but my favorite thing about this offseason, like my favorite cocktail party conversation, is the fact that NFL owners also voted to allow the number 0 on jerseys.
Also very impactful rule change.
But it's just like to me, that's like a fun cocktail party.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know there were no number zeros. I really didn't pay that much attention to note that 0 was missing.
Yeah, I mean, no one really paid attention. I think last season was the first season they allowed single digits for anyone, so zeros are back. Kind of sad they won't allow them on the offensive or defensive linemen. I kind of wanted to see like a 400-pound defensive lineman just in a big 0.
But like why? Because there's certain numbers that go on certain positions on the field, right? Like receivers
Yes.
are usually in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Now they can be in
Quarterbacks
the
are single
teens and
digits.
things. Yeah. For some reason, they didn't allow linemen, offense or defense, to wear 0, which is thoroughly disappointing.
Do you think that's confusing? Because maybe it's like quarterbacks are the only ones who get single digits, so they didn't want to like screw anybody up. Did the 0 look like an 8?
They might just look like a globe or something on some.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, on a big lineman, it probably would look a little bit bigger.
Yeah. So we'll have a 0, just not on linemen, which is kind of sad.
Well, linemen, you keep at it. Don't let them tell you can't be a 0. So one thing I want to talk a little bit about that has kind of come up is, and I'm going to switch to like a little bit of a marketing hat for just a second. Amazon carries Thursday Night Football, which last year was it definitely did not exceed expectations in the least, but I think they had slightly under the 12 million viewers they told advertisers to expect.
Mm-hmm.
They, what I really was intrigued that I read somewhere that their audience at Thursday Night Football was 8 years younger than any other NFL broadcast. So that was kind of interesting. And they're saying that they are selling really well and above expectations at this point in their cycle for advertising. Some of the things like the writer strikes are helping live sports because they don't obviously need those writers. And so that's helping them. But Thursday Night Football being on Amazon is such an interesting thing. And so talk to me about what's your take on that? And
well, I think last year, for whatever reason, every game they had on their schedule ended up kind of being a dud matchup wise. So they didn't really get the big matchups they were hoping for, but they still drew an immense amount of people to watch these terrible games. So it still says something about that. And I think the viewership numbers on the age is, interesting because obviously you have to figure out how to put on Amazon Prime to watch the games. And, some of the older demographics they know how to turn on Fox and CBS and ESPN, so they don't necessarily know how to. So I think it's as the older generations kind of figure out how to switch over to that app, I think that'll increase viewership as well for them.
That's interesting. I think we're going to run out of time for a little bit to talk about, like, you're going to see a lot of advertisement from Bud Light this year, a Sunday Kind of Love commercials. And also you're going to see a big presence from Pepsi Zero Sugar, the official 0 of the NFL, tying back to that number 0 jersey. But I want to talk to you about flex scheduling because you're going to hear this when you hear people talk about football. So talk to me about what the heck flex scheduling is. I mean, my biceps are great and all, but that has nothing to do with my calendar.
Great biceps.
I do, yeah.
They're
I
not
mean,
scrawny, they're nice. And
Popeye.
the flex scheduling is really going to benefit the Thursday night matchups, like we kind of mentioned previously. So for flex scheduling, once we get later in the season, they can take a primetime game that may not be a great matchup as the season progresses. Maybe some team isn't performing like they thought, and they can swap it out with another game in a different time frame.
So they could take a Thursday game and say, okay, Lions, you're sucking right now. I'm going to trade you for the Bills who are playing on Sunday, and they can swap them
That is the
or
newest
swap the
rule.
whole game.
So previously, they could only swap like a Sunday night game with a Sunday afternoon game the same
Which makes
day.
sense.
But
Timing, yeah.
I think we're seeing like the influence that you spoke about that Amazon's having for the amount of money they paid. So this year's the first year they can swap out a Thursday night game for a Sunday night game and swap days completely, which a lot of fans aren't happy about. Because
Right, because you're buying
obviously,
a ticket for a Sunday game.
so yeah, you buy a ticket for a Sunday game, you buy tickets to fly out to see your team on the road, buy hotel. That's all going to change. So weeks 13 through 17 this year are the only weeks they can flex out on Thursdays, and they have to give fans a 28-day notice to.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Okay.
they are giving them some time, but still, if you're planning ahead, you've probably already planned this out. As soon as the schedule came out, you've already got your games marked
Sure,
on where you're
absolutely.
going to see your team play. So they're trying to give them some advance notice, but still, it may not be enough.
And I can imagine from a team perspective,
Mm-hmm.
switching to a Thursday game from a Sunday game or vice versa. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's screwing up your whole schedule, right? Your travel, all the things, everything is coordinated according to that schedule. And all of a sudden you have a Monday night game and then you're turning around to I don't know, a Sunday or whatever it might be. It's just going to screw
Mm-hmm.
all the things up too from a team perspective.
Yes, I don't think anyone really likes playing that Thursday game, right after Sunday. So really, they didn't think. All they're thinking about is money with this
Sure.
announcement. They're not thinking about the fans or the players. So this really just shows that it's all about the money.
Well, I mean, NFL is one of those leagues though that's just
Mm-hmm.
continuing to be this behemoth that grows. So,
Take over
I
as many
mean,
days of the week as they can.
absolutely. I mean, after college football's over, they start taking over Saturday. We already have Monday,
Yes.
Thursday, Sunday. They'll take over Saturday after college football is over. I mean, you slowly start to like seep into your whole entire universe.
And I think am I correct that this year there's Black Friday games, I think, too.
I think you are correct.
So
Yes,
they're
I am pretty sure correct.
so they are slowly taking over every day of your life.
Well, I mean, keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, for better or for worse.
Is there anything we went a little longer than usual on this one just because I think there's so many interesting facets to what's
Yes.
happening in this season. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
Can I leave you with the rule change?
You sure leave me with a rule change. This is your world.
Okay. Another thing the owners voted on, they're changing the fair catch rule. So like on a kickoff, on touchbacks, you'll see a kicker kick the ball into the end zone. The
Mm-hmm.
player will wave his hand and they'll down it and bring it out to the 25-yard line.
Right, the fair catch really, yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
now that can be done anywhere from the 25-yard line into the goal line. So in that 25-yard span, a player can just wave his hands, catch it, and it'll bring it out to 25 no matter what.
That's interesting. So even if he's on the second yard line, they'll still bring it out to 25.
Yes.
But that's all about so the rules changed around the fair kick because you were having special teams guys from the kicking team
Mm-hmm.
run 80 yards full speed into this receiving player, and
Yes.
there were a lot of injuries, as we can imagine. If you're being hit by a semi truck,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to not feel good. And so that's essentially the premise behind the rule change on the fair catch. In general, they've just made it now a grander scale, a wider area, if you will.
Yeah, they're trying to limit the impact and the amount of kickoffs that are returned.
They're trying to encourage people to do it. It actually sounds like we're
Exactly.
making this your advantage. Take it.
Yes, and now it's up to the coaches to figure out how to get around that and kick it so they make people return it. It's quite the
That's
cat
interesting.
and mouse game.
It really is. Intriguing. Well, we'll obviously keep our eye on the NFL as we go through the season, which you can find either on our social media platforms or also on our Monday and Friday podcast, our Monday Minute and our weekend preview, where we'll keep you posted on that. We also have a email newsletter that goes out on Wednesday mornings. So you will be equipped with everything you need about this season. But should you have any questions during this season, we obviously will continue to talk about on this longer form of the podcast. Let us know. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you listen to the podcast that is coming out next week. That would be September 13th. Check that out because we're talking about basically calling out about what does it look like to call a play for a quarterback? What does an NFL coach, how does that play get relayed? It's the most fascinating podcast I think we've ever done. I'm pretty sure if you watch the YouTube version, my mouth is just hanging open the whole time because I'm so intrigued by all these things that I never knew existed. So highly recommend that. And that came from a reader question. So we too will listen to your questions if you send us a note, and we would be happy to fulfill those. So thanks, Scott, for sharing your NFL brain with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers, go football.
Cheers, Winebacker, go football.